Living paycheck to paycheck is no way to spend the rest of your life. Unfortunately, if you're like most millennials, this is a sad reality. I'm sure it's totally stressing you out. But here's the thing, it isn't your fault. In fact, you're sort of the victim of a very common trap. What trap? Well, it's a combination of pervasive social messages that entice you to spend money on things you don't need, coupled with a lack of a financial plan for the future. When we turn 18 or graduate from college, our personal freedom is very important to us. And one of the ways we express that desire for freedom is spending money on things we want, even if we don't need them. But you know what? Ultimate freedom isn't being able to buy whatever you want, but not having to worry about money in the first place. And that only comes from being responsible with your finances and following a good financial plan. There are a lot of common mistakes that millennials make with money. And in this video, I'm gonna give you the advice I wish I had received when I was just out of school. If you heed these suggestions, you'll never have to stress about living for your paychecks again. Ready? Let's go! So my number one piece of advice is to spend less than you make, not the other way around. I know, it seems obvious to you and me, but a lot of people don't see it that way. Especially when you think that 40% of Americans couldn't pay a $1,000 emergency that came up out of the blue. So the easiest way to get out of that trap is to just keep track of your spending and spend less on things you don't have to. I'll explain why this works so well. Say you have $500 in your bank account right now. If you wanted to, you could spend it all today. But if you didn't spend it and kept it as a buffer, imagine how much peace of mind that would give you. No more worrying about your bills or whether you can afford shopping for food. You'll have mental security to know that if something happened, you would be covered and could recover from unforeseen problems. Do you see what I mean? That's a pretty cool kind of freedom. The second mistake is getting into consumer debt. You know what's a pain in the butt? Going into debt to buy something you can't afford. The problem is, we're all susceptible to this. We get caught up in the moment and forget that we don't have the money to pay for it. We think we'll be able to make up for it later, and sometimes we do, but usually that later never comes. And then when it does, you find yourself in a situation where you can't pay off your debt fast enough because now you've got bills too. And what's worse is that when you do manage to get out of debt, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to keep up with future payments so quickly. So instead of starting out with a lot of consumer debt, try starting out with none at all. That way, when life hits you with an unexpected bill or emergency situation, you'll have time and money on hand to handle it without having to worry about paying off debts. If you're struggling to pay your consumer debt, don't ignore it. There are a lot of ways to get out of consumer debt, so don't give up because you've been in a hole for a while. Here are 2 tips on how to get out of consumer debt. First, set up a payment plan with your creditor. You might be able to negotiate a lower interest rate or even an extended payment plan. Second, consider filing for bankruptcy protection. If you can prove that your financial situation has changed since filing for bankruptcy, the court might allow you to discharge some or all of your debts under certain circumstances. Of course, be sure to check with a legal professional and don't just take the advice of someone in a YouTube video. This is definitely not legal advice, just some friendly suggestions. And now we are on the third mistake. It is lifestyle inflation. The biggest mistake people make when they're trying to get out of debt is inflating their lifestyle. Instead of spending less and saving more, they spend more and save less. They keep going back to the same old cycle of spending more than they make, and then having nothing left over at the end of the month. It's a vicious cycle. You spend more than you make, then have nothing left over at the end of the month. And then you feel bad about yourself because you've been inflating your lifestyle for years. And now all this money is gone, and there's nothing left for you to spend it on. You're stuck in a downward spiral that feels impossible to escape from. The fourth mistake is having no emergency fund. If you're not prepared for a sudden financial emergency, like losing your job or not being able to pay rent, it can leave you in a tough spot. You might feel like there's no way out and you'll be stuck without money until the next payday. But that's not true. You do have another option. Build an emergency fund. An emergency fund is money you set aside to only be used in case of an emergency, where you have no other options. Ideally, the size of this fund should equal anywhere from 3 to 6 months of your expenses and should be kept easily accessible. But, not too easily accessible. Now think about what would happen if you had a few $1,000s saved up in an emergency fund because you had already paid off your debt or taken care of some big bills. You'd have a cushion that could help you stay on track when life keeps throwing you curveballs. It's not always easy to set up an emergency fund, but it's worth it when the time comes. Finally, it's time to stop making the fifth mistake, not contributing to your retirement. You probably heard the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And this is a good rule of thumb. But it's also a good idea to diversify your holdings. Having enough money to live off of is a good first step. But you should also think about investing that money so that it grows and compounds for you over time. For instance, the best time to contribute to a Roth IRA is when you're young and not earning a ton of money. Why? Because you're in a low tax bracket already. So you have more money left over, and your money has more time to grow. Or a 401k allows you to reduce your taxable income and postpone your tax bill until retirement. Not to mention that sometimes, employers will match your contribution dollar for dollar up to a certain amount. This is the best time for you to save your money. You'll never have an opportunity to save money and accumulate assets for your financial future than right now. It's all about starting early so it pays off later. It can be hard for some people to focus on saving their money early on in their careers when they have other things going on in life. But investing doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs a little bit of discipline and a willingness to do what works best for your future. That's the beauty of it. Financial planning is a process, and you'll figure out what works best for your own situation. You don't need to follow a set of rules in order to be financially smart. You just need to know your own values, goals, and priorities. And then you can make the right decisions for yourself. So take some time today and think about the kind of life you want. What makes you happy? What do you want for yourself and your family? What do you want for your friends and co-workers? Once you have a clear picture of what's important to you, then it's time to start planning out how you're going to get there. It's all about understanding the underlying rules of money. In fact, I have a whole video where I talk about understanding these rules. So click right here to watch that one next. You'll be glad you did. See you there!